No. That's gonna be interesting. A whiskey podcast. Cheers, man.
Cheers, man.
Generally, when I drink,
Yeah.
especially in English, because it's not my main language, I'm having a hard time talking in the end. So I really gonna have to, focus near the end.
Okay.
About if I'm the 3/4, yeah. If I'm less than a half, I'm probably gonna have to,
Switch it up to French.
Oh,
My
geez.
French isn't super great, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
My French gets better the more I drink. So.
Okay. Well, do you guys have the bottle to fill him up if he drinks fast? Like, please. No, that's funny. So yeah. So man, okay. You've been working 6 years with PHP, right?
More. I would say, let's say like 11 years.
11 years.
11 years. 6 years at a desk.
Yeah.
In an office, in a formal setting.
Right.
And then let's say like 4 to 5 years, either personal projects or freelance development. And of those 4 to 5 years, the majority of it was actually working for a freelancer that kept giving me contracts for some reason over and over. It was a conglomerate in the Middle East.
Wow.
And they just needed some help in PHP, so I refined my development through them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you learn PHP on your own, or you got it at school?
Yeah, so on my own. I went to school, but I don't like to credit school with anything.
No.
So I think formal education is cool, but formal education can't take any credit for, I think, my successes. So PHP 4, I learned PHP 4 on my own when I was maybe, I think, 12 or 13.
Right.
My brother bought this book. I don't know if you've ever seen this book. It's called like Sam's Teach Yourself PHP in 24 hours.
Probably. We had a big shelf in the past year.
It's totally a lie. It doesn't take 24 hours. It's more like 3 months. But that was like the first programming book I ever read, and then I realized like I got to start doing this. So yeah, I found this book and I picked it up, and I've been doing PHP.
It's funny you mentioned the school, because I was talking with Kyle this week actually about school, and if you need to go at school and spend years there to learn programming, and I'm like, man, I believe that in the next decade or two, like, school will decline and more people will learn on their own. Like, personally, I've been a sysadmin and I never went to school for that. Actually, it's the opposite. I was at the university and I was writing like tutorial and the course notes for the teacher, because he didn't know how to set up SendMail and how to set up those crap, and I've learned so much just by doing it on my own. But I was curious. I wanted to learn. I wanted to just like, I would get on the computer and I would do like 24 hours in a row just figuring out my problem, because that's what I like. I was very passionate about troubleshooting.
Yeah.
And I kind of don't believe that someone that wants to become a programmer or a developer and go learn at school but never do anything at home on his own time, that is gonna, or she's gonna be good.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
You can tell, like, when you're interviewing developers. I've done probably, I'm sure you've done it as well. You run, simply PHP. When you're interviewing developers, you can tell the profiles right away based on conversation. Like, are you somebody who's studying this on your own? Are you somebody who learned purely academics? Or are you a mix of both? And it's the purely academics that I like straight up avoid hiring them, because what ends up happening is that passion that got them into learning programming is missing, and that same passion is what's needed to get into most problem solving.
For most cases,
creative.
Yeah, for most cases, the reason for them to go at school to learn this is a career path. It's just nothing else than that.
Yeah.
Seems interesting, but my daughter asked me the other day. Her boyfriend is at college right now and learning that, but he don't do much at home. And she was like, "Yeah, maybe I would like to do that." I said, "Well, open a computer and do it."
Yeah.
And yeah, but I want to go at school. No, look, school is not a shortcut that's gonna teach you in the easiest way. And like, no, like to come back to my sysadmin experience, I knew nothing about Linux, and that guy basically installed me Linux on a machine, and he gave me the keyboard and said, "Here you go, figure it out."
Yeah.
And the only base that I had was the MS-DOS command lines, which were completely different,
Yeah.
except CD.
Yeah.
That was pretty much that,
Yeah.
you know. But I figured it out, and yeah, it developed my troubleshooting and my curiosity and my ability to learn. And I think for devs, like anytime we get a dev here that didn't went to school and called himself a senior, I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
I really want to see this guy.
Yeah.
You know?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to come back to this in 1 second. I look around and I noticed as I walked in, almost everybody was using Linux.
Mm-hmm.
I love this because I think this is kind of also a telltale sign of a tinkerer. You know, somebody who's kind of going out of their way to try something unknown, something that's not necessarily taught to them or fed to them in school. So that's super cool. But no, I'm interested. So somebody who's not gone to school and calls himself a senior, I've had some maybe poor experiences with, the person who labels themselves a senior, but is missing the fundamentals. Right. And I think the fundamentals are super important. And we don't apply them day to day, but being aware of the fundamentals is incredibly important. Have you had issues like meeting seniors and, you talk about something a bit lower level and maybe it goes over their head, or no?
Not as far as I know. But for me personally, like I didn't go to college, right? So, but I wanted to go to the university. So I went on, because I was adult, like after 24, 21 years old, you can subscribe and go.
Yeah.
But when I got there and I was in my first math class and the teacher started to talk about the integrals, I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And then I raised my hand. I'm like, sorry, sir, what's integrals? It's like, you're at the university now. Like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that. Yeah. So that was hardcore for me. So in terms of fundamentals for the school, I didn't have them. Yeah. I agree that it gives you a toolbox and some base stuff. And
okay, so let me clarify. I'm not talking about like fundamentals like this. I mean like comp sci fundamentals. Right. I think like if I throw a developer on like a Linux server, I expect them to be comfortable. I don't care what kind of developer you are. You should be very comfortable on a Linux server.
Absolutely.
Right? When we talk about the network, you should understand how the network works. You should understand the different layers.
Absolutely.
If you are a senior developer and you don't know the difference between like layer 4 and layer 7, we stop the conversation. You're not a senior. Yeah. So I think when I meant fundamentals, I was talking more about that. I'm maybe on the same page as you. If I talk to a developer who doesn't understand an integral, I really don't care. It's fine.
No, that's for sure.
Unless you're working at some NASA, it's cool if you don't. It's cool if you don't know how to do this kind of stuff.
Oh no, that's for sure.
For everybody else, we're just building web apps. It doesn't got to be that. Crazy.
That's it. Yeah. No, I mean, it's very easy nowadays for developers to call themselves senior after 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
And actually, in another conversation on this podcast with Nick, we were talking about that. And for me, like, being a senior doesn't just come with being smart, and knowing your technology and your languages. Because if that was the case, then we have a great guy here. I think he's 22 years old, and he's awesome, and he would be a senior. But you cannot be at 21, 22 years old. You cannot be really a senior. Like, you don't have the workplace experience, the instinct about what happened if this, what happened if that. All of that experience. And for me, like, senior comes with a certain sense of leadership too. A certain sense of seeing in advance what can happen if I build something this way, or if I just accept what the client's request is and do it. But I don't think forward. I don't think, okay, but what happened if he wants to do this with the app eventually? All of these little things comes with, a good senior person. And a good senior person doesn't know everything on his fingertip, neither. Yeah. But knows how to get the information.
Yeah.
It's, a lot of our guys here went to Dawson, And you can tell, you can tell that and some other school too. They definitely come with something more, but those guys that have something more, they definitely did code at home, and even before going to school. I mean, university. And if you don't have this passion and this desire to evolve in this technology, then you just become an average person, and not person but developer. And there's so many average developers out there. I mean, when you post for a job, I'm sure that you get like 80% of it, it's just average developers, right?
Yeah.
And you have 2-3% that are great developers, and the rest are pretty good. But for 80% of them, it's average people. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all need average people, right? So, but yeah, that's I guess as I'm saying it, I realize that school does bring a lot, but doesn't make you a whole thing. Like, it doesn't make you really good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah. You need the 10x developer, right? Like, I don't know if you've heard of this term, the 10x developer, the one developer who can do the work of 10.
Yep.
Like, they're hard to come by.
Yeah.
But the 10x developer and school, they're not. It's not the same thing, right? Like, just because you went to school won't mean you're a 10x developer, and just because you didn't go to school doesn't mean you're a 10x developer.
Exactly.
It's really like, I think it's an even distribution now. It's a matter of numbers. Like, are there more people who are passionate about programming outside of school, or are there more people who are passionate about programming inside of school?
Yeah.
So if you're looking for the 10x developer, you got to figure that out first, and then filter your resumes based on that. Interesting fact, actually, about two of my last workplaces is we didn't even consider school when we were looking for developers. If you put school on your resume, it was indifferent for us. And if you brought it up in your resume, if you brought it up in your interview, you'd be like, "It's cool, we get it, but like, we're not interested in that." So I think that was really cool too. It was also, maybe, I don't know if progressive is the right word, but it was pretty cool of the companies to just overlook that and think more about, like, what have you done on your own? Like, not what does this piece of paper say, but like, prove to me that you think you're worth your title. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Actually, we we saw one guy like that, and the 10x example. I mean, we do have great guys, but this one really stood out at the time, and he was with us for a couple months, and eventually we got a request for some Ruby, and so we asked him, Ruby? Well, give me an hour, I'm gonna check. The guy came back and said, "Okay, I'm ready." So, "What do you mean you're ready?" I said, "Well, I'm ready, give it to me." And he literally knocked it, like, in no time. And a month or two after, he got hired by Amazon in Seattle.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
This guy was like very impressive. Like, I think he had did this even doctorate. His wife was doing one too in Montreal. They both moved in Seattle.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was one of the short but impressive experience we had.
Yeah, I wouldn't beat yourself up over that. Like, that kind of a brain is hard to retain.
It's crazy.
This person was headed for.
Like, when he came, he said, "I'm sorry, I got an offer from Amazon, and they're gonna move me in Seattle." I'm like,
"Go ahead."
Am I supposed to compete against that? Like, it's not gonna happen. Like, that was really, really special, and he was like, this guy was a lot about PHP. He was doing a lot of Python. Then he got into Ruby quickly in an hour, and he just knew how the programming structure and the languages works, and he just, I don't know, like, he was really impressive. That was interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because I think that, honestly, there are programmers that are really good programmers, and then there are, I think, the class of people that call themselves maybe PHP developers, JavaScript developers.
Like, you have the mechanics and the guy that just do Mercedes, for example.
Exactly. And this is the kind of person that you want. I think this is the exact opposite of the person that gives PHP a bad name. I'm a huge PHP fan. I love PHP. And, like, I come from a history of working with statically typed languages. Like, I'm big into C#. I'm recently really big last 3 years into TypeScript.
Right.
Like, I love everything that comes out of the person behind these two. It was like the same guy who built both. So I love these languages. And I have, like, a very hateful stance against Python. and yet I love PHP. So like I'm like a walking kind of hypocrite stereo, whatever, So, but I'm a huge fan of PHP, but I find that there are a lot of PHP developers, and then there are programmers, I think, and then the programmers will learn how to use PHP well.
Yeah.
And then maybe there are like the less talented or less experienced or less exposed PHP developers that give PHP its bad name. Now, I'm going to be kind of objective here. PHP gives you a lot of tools to shoot yourself in the foot, right? Maybe more tools than other languages. There are a lot more, foot guns, if you will, in PHP than in other languages. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that PHP can't be like a beautiful, eloquent, well-built language, right? I've seen incredibly beautiful PHP projects, and I've seen disgusting C# projects.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So the tool is just a tool, and if you wield it poorly, like you're going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Oh yeah, there's pros and cons for all languages.
Yeah.
The thing we do love about PHP is the flexibility, the amount of developers. You wouldn't serve a client properly by, just like that's before we were doing some Ruby, but resources are not easy to find. And nowadays, like we have Shopify in Montreal that absorb all of them. So there's pretty much have none available in the market, and we already had clients that were pissed because we've let them keep going with Ruby, and when they left us, they couldn't find anyone that was affordable to work on the project, and that's why we ended up just focusing on PHP because it's good for everyone.
Yeah,
Facebook is still having some PHP part, in their platform.
Yeah.
We already had a project, and that's like more than 10 years ago. So computers and the servers and the processors were not that powerful, and we were generating more than 500,000 visitors a day on that thing, just with a couple load balancer on a custom PHP MVC, and no problem,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a more versatile, I find.
Yeah.
More flexible, easier, and more convenient.
Yeah.
But if you would build an app that needs power, and you don't care about the language, maybe you would pick something else, But there's not much you cannot do with PHP nowadays.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And like I find myself fighting to defend PHP a lot, which is probably a bad sign. Maybe I'm like a bit of a I don't know what the right nice word is, but I'm definitely not on the right side of the battle here. But PHP is used by companies of scale. You ever get into an argument with somebody who goes like, oh, but PHP doesn't scale, right? And then you get to the bottom of this argument, like, what does scaling really mean, right? Because if you're going to try to tell me, like you said, Facebook isn't a big scale company, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Like Baidu is the biggest search engine in Southeast Asia, PHP. You got Etsy, one of the biggest marketplaces in the world, all PHP, like everything PHP. You've got Slack. If I'm not mistaken, Slack, half of their backend is PHP.
I heard about that, yeah.
They have like this whole thing, like, when you paste a link or you paste something into Slack and it gets enriched, that thing is like incredibly quick, incredibly powerful. It enriches everything. I think that entire kind of platform is built on PHP.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, there is a place for PHP in scale, right? But there's also a place for PHP in like the more what we would call uglier parts of the world. But if someone wants to argue the whole PHP doesn't scale thing, I think that's an argument that can be easily kind of poked if you just use these 4 examples. But I agree with you. Like if you want power, like if you're doing something like ad tech, you better stay away from PHP, right? You need like sub-millisecond kind of computations. Like there's no way PHP is going to fit this. Exactly.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
But unless you can give me specific reasons why PHP isn't the right tool, I would argue that PHP is the right tool if you have the right people. Yeah. Right? It comes down to
for sure.
So if you have a bunch of Ruby pros, do it in Ruby. Yeah. Like don't find a reason to take on a language that your team doesn't know just because you think it won't suit the job, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you have a bunch of Ruby that are really good internally, and you're gonna have a Ruby team forever, go for it.
Exactly.
Same thing with Python.
Yeah.
Or C Sharp. Or I'm not a fan of it, but but I mean, all languages have some as benefits. So like I hate when people are. No, sorry, I'm not. I don't hate. I kind of have empathy for them. Like when when people have like this closed mind about PHP sucks.
Yeah.
And like, okay, what do you like, Ruby? Like, especially for the Ruby world, I heard that a lot. Maybe because I was talking with a lot of them. Said PHP sucks so much and this and that. And I mean, you want to talk scalability? Like Ruby has a lot to say about it. You know, it's not that scalable, and but I'm sure there's good things too in Ruby.
Yeah.
You know, we stopped doing it, but there's good things too. Like I know that the code is super clean and it's very easy to learn and all of that, but you know, at the same time, if you work with PHP and Laravel, it's pretty clean too. You know, so
yeah. It's not just clean; it's beautiful. Honestly, like it's a joy to work with, right?
Yeah.
Like you come from a different language that has a framework not as mature as Laravel, and like the difference is night and day, right?
Yeah.
Like in Laravel, you want something, it's probably there for you, and it's done well. In another language with a framework not as mature as Laravel, like fine, your language is dope, but your framework just is not as mature.
Exactly.
Right. There are a few frameworks as mature as Laravel, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. No, that's right. I mean, Symfony is there before, and then Laravel is built.
Yeah, I feel like Laravel was built on the backbone of Symfony,
Yeah.
right? So like Symfony gets a lot of credit for this.
I had asked, I forgot what it was, but I had asked the guys what was the difference in between, because it's very similar.
Yeah.
I know the how do you call it, the
Eloquent.
No. Yeah, there's that. That I remember. No, but the support. What's the term? There's three letters for the support. Lifetime.
LTS.
Yeah.
LTS.
So I know Symfony has a longer LTS.
Yeah.
But when we had this conversation, they could only tell me two things that were different from Laravel to better in Symfony. So it's Laravel is pretty solid. It's pretty solid. Most projects we have here, we just do it. It's just like by default we use Laravel. So if I had a camera, Steve, I think I would just turn it to you and look at the sneaky Steve that's going for a drink. Yeah, look, it's Friday night. Normally here we do recordings early in the morning, like 9 or 10. It's the energy is up. Like for me, I had a long day. I woke up at like 3:30 and I had my workout at 5, and then came in by 7, and now I'm having a whiskey. That was pretty interesting.
Nice.
I was actually hoping Nebez would tell us our origin story together. The reason I hired Nebez.
You hired him.
Yes. His education was not. It was the last thing.
That's interesting.
Yes. So earlier when I mentioned that I worked at two companies, I kind of totally ignored education. I was talking about the company that Steven and I know each other from, which is Alexar & Co. At the time, it was not really big on the e-commerce space, so I don't know if Alexar & Co. is the right title. But how did I get hired? So thank you for bringing this up, Steve. It was a random project. That was, it was when Flappy Bird was popular.
Flappy Bird.
If you ever played this game on your phone, it was just like a bird, and you would tap and it would fly, and then if you hit the pipes, you would die.
I remember that. Okay.
Yeah, it was like this viral sensation, and then like I only had maybe an hour with the app before it got removed, and I didn't get to really keep up with the hype. All my friends were playing it; they were posting their high scores. So what I ended up doing is I just remade the game in a web browser. I kind of made a little web app game, and it kind of took off. It got pretty popular, and then. Steven calls me and he's like, listen, like this, I've been playing this Flappy Bird game for how long was it? I think it was like an hour or something.
Yeah, a half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, so he called me like playing for like 30, 45 minutes. And at the time I might have been like maybe 21 years old or 20 years old, completely uneducated, still doing freelance. And Steven's like, we got to chat. And I honestly thought that I was unemployable at the time. Because I was. Like if you looked at my resume, it was pretty trash. And then, we meet up and we have a really dope conversation, and that was it. Like, I think, we hit it off. I really got along with their tech team. I really got along with Steven, and it was like an all around great conversation. And we talked a lot about PHP, and they LXR had a history of kind of, I would say, unfortunately low quality PHP, but they were willing to build on it. They understood that tech was really an enabler for their future.
Right.
So they were done kind of doing the cheap way of like old PHP 4, just like low cost, and they really wanted to take what they had and bring it to the next level. And that's kind of where I got in there. So that's when I went from, not professional PHP anymore to professional PHP. And I really got to, put those years of like freelance experience that I had under my belt finally to use in a corporation. And it was super fun. And that was honestly that was probably my coolest professional experience ever.
Really?
No joke. I'm not just saying that because he's in the room. I tell that to everybody.
So now you're gonna have to explain me something. Then now you just opened the door for that.
Yeah.
So you were there.
Yeah.
And then you left for a big company.
Yeah.
And then you left that big company to go back to that to Steve company.
Yeah.
And then you left that company to go back to a big company.
Exactly.
So what's the deal there? Like,
Yeah.
why did you go from a small to a large to a small to a large?
Yeah. So what I don't have on my resume is actually there was another stint in there for an even bigger company, but I intentionally hide it from my resume because I don't like the company and I don't want to give them the satisfaction.
Okay.
And I won't mention them either. But you probably know the company.
Name it. We're gonna beep it.
Yeah. Okay. Beep it out. It's
I don't.
It's one of his companies.
So all of those words, Kyler, you're gonna be beep beep beep.
Yeah. So I have like a really bad place for them in my history, but it was an interesting experience. I thought I got exposed to big corporation when I originally had left. At the time they were called Luxury Secondhand. When I left Luxury Secondhand for the first time, I thought that I needed to experience what the big corporation world was like, because my first experience was with this company, thou who shall not be named, and it was just a horrible experience. It was some really shady stuff, and anyways, it really didn't work out, so I kind of just scrubbed that from my resume and I dipped.
How long did you stay there?
I stayed there maybe 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
It's not so bad. Okay, I was afraid you would tell me months.
No, I think like week number 5, I gave in my 2-week notice, and right after I gave it in, I was like, wait, I'm leaving tomorrow, actually.
Okay.
And then, it was honestly, I don't want to name the company, but I'm sure some people who are listening know what company it is.
Okay, don't give too much word to Kyler.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to be beeping all the way. Like.
And then I went to Essence, and I really hit it off with Essence because LXR kind of showed me my love for, or Luxury Secondhand rather at the time, showed me my love for e-commerce and showed my love for PHP and how effective PHP could be. And I went to Essence and I got to use it in a massive scale, like a scale you wouldn't believe. We're talking like, millions, tens of millions of hits a day, sometimes hundreds of millions of hits a day. And like PHP did the job and it was great. And then, I got to work on projects of unfathomable size. Like, I can't say the exact dollar amount, but like huge amounts. And it was a great experience for me. But I think what ends up happening is, what I realized is that the scale at which you work kind of goes hand in hand with the kinds of challenges you face, or rather, more specifically, the amount of challenges you face, right? Yeah. Like at Essence, the big challenge was always scale. Right? Like, how do we scale to this many users, this many millions of people? Whereas at Luxury Secondhand, it was like we need to literally solve everything because everything's on fire. Tomorrow could be the last day. So like, how are we gonna fix this? Yeah. So it was like 2 totally different problems. And when I had kind of joined Essence, I really got to learn a lot about scale, but I really got to only learn a lot about just scale. And then when I reflected on the 2.5 years I had spent at Essence, I had kind of done like this little postmortem, if you will, of my last, my career growth, my professional growth, my self-growth. And I realized like I'm not growing as fast as I thought I would be growing, And then, I'm not kidding, super coincidentally, Pete, the director of tech at the time, calls me like the day after my postmortem. I don't know how he knows. This guy's a psychic. He knows I'm having like all this like these thoughts. And then he tells me about LXR's change. And LXR it wasn't like specifically in Essence going back to Luxury Secondhand change. It was very much Luxury Secondhand is going through this phase, this change. And like, you need to be here for this. And it was, we're on the brink of doing huge things, and at the time, no one was allowed to talk about it, so no one told me, but the company was planning on going public. So it was really like, it was huge changes. So that's the kind of, he said all the right words to me, like we need to solve these challenges.
Yeah.
You need to help us solve these challenges. And it was just a perfect match. And it stopped being about scaling, millions of hits, millions of users, crazy amounts of traffic. And now it was like, how do you scale a business? I went back to the business side. And I think while the role was still highly technical in nature, the proximity to the business really grew my, developed my business acumen. And I think it's incredibly important for developers to have this experience. Is tech isn't just tech. Like, tech is, no one will hire you to play around with the cool tech, right? This is a job that doesn't exist. Maybe it exists in like an R&D department somewhere in Google, but like you're not getting that job if you're here in Montreal, no offense. So, if you want to work in tech in Montreal, you better have some sense of why you're worth what you're worth. And you're worth what you're worth, what you get paid because you provide some sort of value to companies.
Oh, yeah.
And LXR was very obvious about, this is the value we need you to provide, right? So come here and fill this gap. So that was the big reason for why I went to, the company that was shifting. It was a huge shift. It was like luxury secondhand. We're now rebranding to LXR & Co. They had partnered with Sid Lee, and we did this whole, we're shifting from the bottom up. And it was super cool. And I wanted to be there for that change. And I don't regret it. Honestly, like, luxury secondhand the first time propelled my career like 4 years in the matter of like 2 months.
Right.
I was there for longer, obviously, but like it really put you in a tough situation. And the second time around, I thought I had matured enough that like, okay, they're not going to toss me in the deep end. This time I'll know what I'm doing. And like, no, I was wrong. The second time around, I got tossed straight in the deep end, but like you have to make your way out. And and that was incredibly growing for me. Like I learned a ton about tech, but more than that, I learned why tech is valuable. Right? Like why is it that I'm doing what I'm doing? Why are they paying me to do what I do?
Right.
It's not for fun. It's a business. It's a husband and wife that run this. It's their money. They're not just throwing their money away, right? They want to make sure that you're providing some sort of a value.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of why I went back there. And then, without getting into too many details, Steven's laughing over here. Without getting into too many details, one thing led to another. LXR is a public company now.
Public companies get messy.
Public companies
Oh,
can
no
get messy.
kidding.
Public companies can get messy. And this is public information, and I won't get too much into detail, but what I'm saying is out there. There was a change of management. I think given my role, I'm also included in management. So it was time for a change.
Yeah.
I
will never be behind a company that is public.
It's rough. I learned that now.
I'm just so not interested. Like I want my freedom.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to have those quarterly meetings and get prepared for a week before and waste that time type of thing.
Yeah.
This company will never be public.
Right.
I'm so not into that. Like, I would shoot myself before that. It's just thinking of, look, we do and we did have public companies as clients, and when you look at, but we need to wait for this, we need the approval for that, and I want to move the table, I need to fill the form. Jesus Christ,
it's crazy. You need legal involved in everything. There's all sorts of paperwork, bureaucracy. There are way too many gears, right? Yeah. Like
all decisions are actually based on freaking stock price and shareholders.
Exactly.
It's fucked up.
It's crazy. Isn't it ironic? Like a company goes public, and then the only thing that matters is the optics of the next 3 months. What is your next quarterly going to look like?
It's like politics.
Exactly. You're optimizing for the short term, and it's incredibly, like, for a company that needs to think 5 years ahead. Going public, and I'm not talking about any company specific, but if you need to think 5 years ahead, going public is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Because the optics kind of blur your long-term decision making. You're only thinking about what's my stock price going to be next week? How am I going to explain this to the board? You stop making good decisions.
Am I going to make my bonus?
Exactly.
No, that's true.
Yeah, if your bonus is paid out in options, like you better have a strong. You're looking to cash out. You want to cash out in 3 months. You're not looking to cash out in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's bad. It's bad. I think it keeps you very short-sighted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you're a company that's kind of figured out your long term, go public. That's fine. But if you're still figuring out your long term, it's very, very hazardous to go public.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I'm not enough educated on the subject of being public because actually I'm so not into that.
Yeah.
That I never really studied the subject. If ever it would become an option, I would manage to get out of it like the month after type of thing. But I don't think it's possible when you do, like, whether you go public or you get bought, like, they're gonna want you to stay around for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, you know. So it's not reality. So no, never gonna happen. For never gonna
Steven,
happen.
tell me if I'm wrong. I think the coolest part of going public, so Steven and I were there for, was going to hit the button when the market opened, you know? So like the market opens, we hit this button that obviously did nothing, and then everyone was clapping awkwardly. Yeah, so it was super awkward.
Really?
Yeah. It was cool, but it was fun, honestly. That was a cool experience, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. It was fun, and the only way you kind of know it's going to go the way it's going to go is if it goes the way it's going to go. So it was a great learning experience.
It motivates people to step up.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone needs to step up.
But does it last?
No.
That's it.
Yeah. It doesn't
No,
last.
that's true. Like,
it doesn't last. It quickly goes from a motivator to demotivator.
Yeah.
Your first quarter before you post earnings, you know, your stock prices, like, everyone is going based on these expectations. Everyone has crazy high hopes for you. And like every employee who is vested in the financial interests of this company, so anybody with stock options, is very excited for their first earnings.
Exactly.
And then earnings come out, the stock market reacts super poorly, it becomes a demotivator.
That's
You're
what I
no
was
longer
going to say.
motivated.
That's what I was going to ask you is what happened when the staff, some of the staff have the options, and then the earnings comes out and the stock price lose 15% that day, you know.
It's rough, you know, like it's very rough because the employees, it was my first time being part of a public company. And it's hard to kind of rationalize, like, we're doing everything right. Why does the stock market, you know, it felt like, why does the stock market hate us, right? We are making all the right decisions, but then you empathize with the investors. And these, you know, non-institutional investors aren't looking for the 2-4 year play. They're looking for the 3-6 month plays, sometimes even day trades, right? So you kind of, if you put yourself in the shoes, you start to understand why. And it's just like, it's a really shitty feeling, you know?
Oh, no.
Like, you're like, this company that had a market capitalization of like $90 million tomorrow is now like $80 million. Why? Because we missed projections by like 100K. Are you serious? We'll make up 100K tomorrow. It's like Black Friday next week. Like, we'll make 100K next week, right?
Yeah.
But the market doesn't give a shit about that.
No.
You know, the market is worried about right now. So
it's the rumor in the news.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think so. LXR is a very interesting story of the companies I've worked for and the companies I've done work for. And I've worked for some pretty big companies. I worked for, like, I did some work for Salah ad-Din, which is like the biggest conglomerate in Iraq. They own like the license to the biggest names of everything. You know, I worked for Essence. I did a lot of work for this other company that shall not be named. I did, you know, so I've done a lot of contract work. I even did some work for, I can't say the name, but a local retailer that also does really big in e-com space. And I think the most technologically advanced company I'd ever worked for was LXR & Co.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a company that at its peak had how many people? 300?
Worldwide?
Yeah.
650.
650 employees.
Wow.
With a dev team of 3.
Jesus.
Right?
No, we got to, you guys are like 6 guys on the dev team.
Okay, but that's still
6?
friggin' small. Like,
okay, so
it's
let's say
it's not even 1% of the people.
Yeah.
It's 0.01%. Yeah. It's like
this was the most technologically advanced company, and I attribute its success entirely to PHP and its owner's ability to understand the value of PHP. Because I think a lot of companies who aren't very, sorry, let me just get comfortable. A lot of companies that don't, that aren't like, that don't have, let's say, technological leaders at the top, right? Like, so if the CEO, COO, CFO are not tech leaders, they might be afraid by what people tell them about PHP, and I've seen this happen a lot. And I've seen this at companies, like maybe even a company I've worked at before.
It's a lack of education.
It's a lack of education, and they're worried about it, so they make this big, rash, kind of uneducated, honestly, decision where they're like, okay, if we're going to scale, we're going to get off PHP. But LXR didn't have the technological leadership in the top, and they still believed in PHP. And this is education.
I like them already.
I still love them. I like the founders of LXR & Co. are two of the most like headstrong people you'll ever meet. They never stopped in the face of adversity, and
you should try to get your
Fred will come in no problem.
100%.
The old boss there.
Fred will come in no problem, but he's gonna want to make you guys public.
Yeah.
He has a seed money for it too.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll bring him in next time.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I'm in.
Exactly. Maybe Fred will come on. He'll talk to you guys.
He's the Indiana Jones of luxury retail.
That's his tagline. Yeah, he
Really?
really is too. He really is. You kind of
Right.
you know, maybe a lot of people don't.
Well, he gave so much trust in me,
Yeah.
you, Pete, and that's how we're able to grow the company.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So this guy, he had faith. He and his co-founder and the entire executive leadership team had full faith in PHP.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know why. And I've never asked them why. And I probably should. I'm still in touch with them. Right.
That's what I would
Yeah.
ask. Yeah.
So maybe next time you guys bring Fred.
Actually, I
in,
would
talk
ask
about it.
because I'm curious to know. Like a lot of people go for C#.net.
Yeah.
Like who would be fired to work with Microsoft or IBM, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's kind of some obvious choices.
Yeah.
PHP is like I feel sometimes that some companies don't want to work with PHP because it's so cheap compared to other languages that it doesn't look price wise logical for them, type of thing. Even sometimes we don't charge, our prices are not so high, and we've been told actually. It's quite, well, it's high and it's not that high, but we already been told that we were not charging enough. But we're we're good with that. We're fine with that. And but again, it's just a matter of perception.
Yeah.
You're not charging enough because it looks like you're not building quality.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that.
Yeah. It doesn't at all.
No.
It doesn't. You need good vision. You
Yeah.
need good strategy,
Yeah.
and then you do need good execution. It's true.
Oh,
And
yeah, for sure.
Sometimes it's hard to execute well on PHP, so I kind of understand where some of this stigma comes from. But you guys are all very competent PHP developers. You have no trouble with the execution, right? It's a lot of I think there's, maybe you can tell me. Is there a lot of doubt when you staff somebody, or you get into someone's space and you tell them, if they're doubting PHP, you got to convince them that PHP is the right decision. Has this ever happened to you?
No, it's hard. Pretty much not, because since we're simply PHP,
Yeah.
you wouldn't get someone that don't really believe in it.
Okay.
But we did get, from the Ruby people, for example,
Yeah.
that were not so convinced about PHP.
Right.
Although we had some guys who were versatile enough to go from Ruby to PHP and go back and forth. Some were having very one vision or very tunnel vision on what they believe in. But honestly, I don't spend time in trying to convince. You should never have to convince someone. You should be. Someone should be curious, and you should explain me. Why is this okay, or why is this better? And then you explain. Okay, that's interesting. Not just be like, no, I don't believe in it, and whatever. Basically, what it means is whatever you're gonna tell me is not gonna change my mind.
Yeah.
And that's just being close-minded.
Yeah.
I say I don't like C# as an example, but that's just because it's running under Windows.
Yeah.
I'm not, like you said it, where a lot of people runs under Linux. Even Steve, he wasn't on Linux before, but he said, okay, I'm gonna try it. I like it.
Yeah.
Some guys run Mac, but computer price is double.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, like the C# thing, I would like to have a very senior C# developer to sit and talk with and say, explain me, what do you like about it? What the strengths, what the weaknesses, I'm curious about those things. That doesn't mean I'm going to like it, but I'm curious. So I guess that's my definition of being open-minded.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, here I am.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Let's,
and now I'm looking at my glass, and I'm getting worried. It's less than half because the ice cube have melt, and I know that. Anyway, I'm starting to feel it in my
You're
mouth.
starting to feel it?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm not going to try to convince you C# is great. I like C# because I'm also subjective. I can't give you very objective reasonings. I think C# is like a beautiful language.
Right.
But I also think PHP is a beautiful language. So
Right.
I
I kind of like what's run under Linux.
Yeah, exactly. So we have .NET Core now. And with .NET Core, you could, build multi-platform.
But in the past couple of years, Microsoft did started to switch
Yeah.
a little bit, you know?
Absolutely. You have the WSL now.
Yeah.
You have Windows Subsystem for Linux. You got VS Code, which is quickly becoming the
Right.
most popular editor out there. You've got TypeScript, which is currently my favorite, probably second favorite language right after PHP. TypeScript is written by the same, kind of designed by, not written by, the same guy who made C#, Anders Hellsberg. And this guy is also responsible for many other successful languages.
Right.
But it's like it's a Microsoft thing, and Microsoft is really kind of embracing the open source community right now. And it's a good look on them.
Hasn't been the case for so long, though.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what suite do you like better, Google Suite or Microsoft?
Big fan of Google Suite. Big fan of Google Suite. Whew. I love Google Suite. I hated Office 365. You know what? Google Suite. If you're a small business out there, don't make the mistake.
No.
Go on Google Suite. You won't regret it.
And even Microsoft. There you go. It's starting now. Microsoft's Team is getting very popular.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time convincing myself to look at it. Like I don't know. Like I've left Windows, I think back in 2006.
Yeah.
And I never went back. I left Mac a year and a half ago about for Fedora. And only Fedora because on my laptop everything works like right away. Like it's awesome.
It's all plug and play. You don't need
Pretty
to worry
much
about anything.
Like I can be now because of my 10, 11 years of Mac. I got used to the command as opposed to the control. So and I'm very shortcut guy. Like I don't use my mouse often, and I couldn't convince myself to go back from my index and my thumb to like something else that I forgot which finger I was using for my control. I think that was this one. I don't know. And but like it's built in Fedora that you can just swap your control and your
They know. They know.
Oh yeah, they know.
Yeah,
they're pretty good at that.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's interesting for that.
I wanted to talk a little bit. I mean, if you want to take the conversation elsewhere.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I want to talk a little bit about PHP at LXR, but not just PHP at LXR, but like PHP at other companies too.
Yeah.
I've seen companies. I spent a lot of time talking about it, but I've seen companies that do very well with PHP.
Yeah.
I've seen companies do very poorly with PHP. But then the worst is, and I've personally seen this, is companies move from PHP, and it is disastrous. And
they would move to what?
So in this specific case, it was from PHP to JavaScript, Node.js specifically. And while I have a lot of problems with Node.js, my issue wasn't with Node.js. My issue is with a company that makes a decision to move because, we talked about it earlier. Yeah. The best tool for the job is the tool your team is experts in, right? So if your team is only like somewhat familiar with the tool, get rid of it. But if your team is experts at this tool, like you are a company that should 100% support the tool that they're experts in.
Oh yeah.
And if you naively decide to change, you are making a huge mistake, because developers aren't just headcounts. Like you can't just get rid of a developer and replace them with somebody else. It's not that simple. There's a huge cost to replacing a developer, a massive cost. The cost is in everything that they know about your business. And I think people might think of developers as just, this is going to sound rude, but like code monkeys. I'm doing air quotes if you're listening.
Yeah.
Code, but that's not true. Your developers know all of the rules of your business in their head. And when you replace a developer, you get rid of all those rules. And maybe they're written somewhere, but probably not. A lot of companies don't write a lot of things down. Because,
we're just starting to write processes and policies. Yeah.
So when you're removing a developer, you're not removing just a code monkey. You're removing a ton of your business.
You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've seen companies that make this shift and find the tool you're moving to isn't the biggest problem, but you're moving to a tool that your team is no longer experts in. You've basically taken away the agility, the speed, the efficiency of your core team, and find maybe the tool is the future, or at least you think it's the future. You've just put your company back 2 or 3 years, And I've seen this, and fine, maybe it all works out in the end. Works out. You lost 2 or 3 years of agility and efficiency, but honestly, the reason and the decision making for switching from PHP to something else is not something that is, I think, well thought out when certain companies are making this change.
It's like on 40 guys, there's probably like 3, 4 that could claim they know Node.js.
Yeah.
Like it's not something you can just switch from a day to another.
Yeah.
If you're going to switch technology, you need to switch your team too. Like it's not something you can just create and okay, you guys now are gonna be learning this technology and this language.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I got to give commends to Lightspeed for this. Lightspeed is so Lightspeed has historically always been a PHP shop, and they knew. So the Lightspeed is kind of like they acquire a lot of companies, right? They're big in the acquisition space. So
Yeah, they did poach a couple guys here.
Oh yeah,
They
Yeah.
also keep their guys too, because I tried to poach it.
Oh, yeah?
They're
Yeah.
pretty good at keeping them.
They're good at retaining. So Lightspeed has kind of, I think they know what they're doing. They understand that the team is super important.
Right.
So they kind of they didn't force anybody. At least they haven't. I hope they don't. But they didn't force anybody to go out of their comfort zone, or maybe comfort zones. They didn't force anybody to learn a tech for no reason.
Right.
So they've done a lot of acquisitions, and they've acquired maybe, I don't know, a handful of companies, and all of them with different techs. And they're not asking these kind of acquisitions to learn PHP and rewrite everything.
Right.
They've got the teams of these acquisitions or new developers who know the techs of these acquisitions working on those projects. And they have the team that knows PHP expertly really well and knows the business working on the PHP side. They didn't try to mess this up by saying, now we're exclusively PHP or now we're exclusively Node or Go.
Yeah.
They understand the value of keeping your domain experts in a language that they're experts in, working on this language.
That's true.
So I got to give commends to Lightspeed for this. They've done a really good job at that.
Yeah.
They have. It might be kind of rough having like 4 or 5 techs internally, but it's working out well for them.
Yeah. That's totally the way to go, actually.
Yeah.
Like you just don't swap your team from. No, that just doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense.
No.
Yeah.
Like when we started to do Ruby here, like we happened to have a couple guys who were very into it and learning it on their own.
Yeah.
And then we started to hire people.
Yeah.
That were exclusively Ruby.
Yeah.
Or Magento, but not trying to convert people.
Yeah.
Into that. That just doesn't work that way.
And it's a learning process, right? Like if somebody wants to learn Ruby, they're going to learn Ruby.
Oh yeah.
But if it's you're not a PHP.
No.
We're not a PHP shop anymore. We're a Ruby shop. Well, like I would start with why. But if you do make this decision and you don't listen to the voice of reason, you're in for a world of pain, and you're tossing money down the sink.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Did you have any other subject that you were interested to cover?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to know why you guys do PHP.
It's flexibility. Honestly, it's really the main reason. Obviously, we know it. We're knowledgeable about it. But I would never really focus on one technology that resources are too difficult to find, too difficult to retain, and that doesn't serve clients' best interest. And to me, PHP offers that because, look, we want to keep the clients for life, obviously, but when they do leave, we don't want them to be fucked and have a hard time finding another company or other developers. And that's what I find with most other languages. It's difficult. It's pricey. It's difficult. And PHP kind of offers this flexibility and this. It's cost effective, and So, but go get a senior Python developer tomorrow. He's gonna be very high 6 figures. He's gonna be expensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's. I think that's really the main reason. We do love PHP. We've been doing PHP for forever, but flexibility is definitely the thing. Definitely the reason.
And there's been a lot of kind of talk that PHP isn't cool anymore and it's finally starting to die.
Okay, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Back in, and there's a guy. Okay, you're gonna beep this name. Okay, I don't want to give him this shout out. There's a guy, probably you heard about him. His name is.
Okay.
Does it tell you something?
No.
He's.
Okay.
And no, I mean I'm joking, but we had some issues together, but I've met with him a few years ago, and we just shook our hands, and it was all good. But basically, this guy at the time, he was starting to be interested with it, and he's been the first one to try to sell me about Ruby, and Ruby's going to be the thing, and look at this, and I'm like, okay, but PHP is our thing for a long time, and I don't see it. And I think that was in, and I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
Later, Ruby did not really pick up, and PHP kept growing. And I think the last stat I've looked at a few months ago were that 78% of everything on the web is PHP based. So I'm still waiting for Ruby to pick up.
And this was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's just that. It's just hearsay. It's just a lot of loud voices, but they're a minority. I mean,
PHP might, get obsolete eventually, but I think their foundation and the community is way too big, to die tomorrow. Like Microsoft's not going to die tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Has there been like a material impact on the amount of clients you're able to find? Because, I mean, over the last 12 years, when you had this conversation and, PHP is going to go away,
right?
Has there been a material impact? If you were to look at the last 12 years, you've had, more and more or less and less success in securing or even finding clients that need PHP work done?
No,
not
at all. Actually, it's booming, I find.
Oh, wow.
For us, yeah. It's more than before. We really started to, look for PHP work back in 2010. And it really started to work around 2015, 2016. But we were still getting like work along the way. But in the past year, let's say, I find that we have a lot of demand, a lot of requests about that. Go figure. I guess the name, I guess the brand, I guess the experience we have and the network that we have and the amount of relationships that we have, maybe. But we don't see this slacking off at all. I don't know what's going to happen with the next, economic crisis that's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a year or 10 years.
Yeah.
But probably the request is going to go down. But honestly, I don't see PHP winding down whatsoever. It's just not happening.
Okay.
At the time we were, I think, on PHP 3 or something ridiculous, like, or very early PHP 4.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're at 7.3, I think, right now. Like, it's
okay.
I just don't see this happening right now.
Yeah. Okay.
But I do believe that eventually, either there's not going to be programming in how we know it today.
Yeah.
Or there's no. I think programming is going to change over the next decades. Maybe that we're not going to be coding the way we know it today, as we don't code with mainframes anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But things are gonna change. That's for sure.
Okay.
That's for sure. But not in the next 5 years.
So in like a century, when people look at the history of it, they'll see like right after assembler was PHP, and then the next magic thing, and like PHP.
That's gonna be coding with memory. I don't know. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's like artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's very interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But none of them is gonna pick up before the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's like virtual reality. We're just starting now to play with this, to have fun with this, but we started to hear about that a long time ago. So it's gonna take time. It's gonna take time. As it's gonna take time for PHP to, to not be used anymore.
I think it's interesting too. Like there's kind of a facet of PHP that has always been like wildly held in a negative regard, and people say the whole like one process or one thread, however you're managing your PHP, whether it be like Apache or Nginx, this whole like one process, one request model isn't good. This is what's keeping PHP from being big and efficient. But I disagree. I think like in the last few years, people have started to come to realize that like one process or one thread, if you will, however you do it, and one request is the ultimate form of encapsulation.
Yeah.
And like there are more not runtimes, but more frameworks that are starting to adopt this pattern.
Yeah.
You know, like you have controller factories
Mhm,
in
mhm.
you know ASP. Controller factory, your controller is killed. You have a factory to create a controller for every request that comes in, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
more languages, more frameworks are starting to adopt this pattern, and this is something that for the longest time was used against PHP, but I think people are starting to realize like this is a great part of PHP. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's cool. No worries.
oh, we got a little beeping going on. All right.
Probably a camera is full. That's yeah.
But I think like that's super reassuring to hear. Like I'm glad to know that, because for me, I mean, I'm always trying to stay on top of what makes me valuable to the market, which is
Yeah.
like what can I provide to businesses.
That's
So if PHP is still cool, like that's good for me. I'm gonna keep learning PHP.
that's a great subject that we could have another conversation about, because those people that focus on one technology only, like I saw so many of them.
Yeah.
I was worried for one of my cousin because he went to one college and he learned and he got into SAP and he's very specialized, and I was worried because if this goes down, if this ends, he's screwed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's very he's very successful.
Good for
He
him.
moved to Mexico and he's working there. It's crazy.
Nice.
But I remember also we had an employee back in 2008,
Yeah.
and she was a very senior, and you're gonna laugh and try to not to, very senior Visual Basic developer.
This exists.
That existed,
Interesting.
and but she had no work anymore. That was over, so she became something else.
Yeah.
So I would never advise any, like I really like what you said, to stay valuable
Yeah.
and keep. I mean, so many people. I forgot that saying. There's a saying that there's like 3 addiction in life. There's something, and a salary. It's like
okay.
I think it's
Life, death, taxes.
no, but the last one, the punch, was a salary.
Yeah.
And basically, people get very comfortable with getting their salary over and over again,
Yeah.
and they're just like happy, and they do their shit, and they code with their,
Yeah.
and they don't learn much. And eventually, if that goes down, it's over.
Yeah.
Your career is over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why earlier we spoke about being a programmer, as opposed to be a PHP developer.
It's
And
important.
It is very important.
You don't want to box yourself in a language, right?
Yeah. We can name easily like 5 JavaScript framework that got obsolete in the past few years. Like,
Easily. Yeah.
You know?
There's like the list is endless. And it's going to keep coming. Every
That's it.
3 months there's
so
a new
imagine if you okay, I don't know if people still use that, but I remember people being super excited about that. I don't know, let's say you're very, very good with Ember.js.
one. Yeah.
It's a long time I didn't hear about it.
Yeah.
I didn't keep myself informed about it, but it's a long time. Even Angular, like now Vue is taking over.
Yeah.
What's going to be after Vue?
Yeah.
Now, even here internally, we do a lot of project with Vue, but next year I'm sure there's going to be something else.
Yeah.
And it's keeping moving. It's not really a language; it's a framework, but still. I mean, you need to stay open-minded. You need to learn other things. Something seems to make sense to you, learn it.
Yeah.
And so that's really how I see things. And that's also why to come back to what we were saying, that if you go to school to learn and you don't have that passion, then that's what is going to happen with you.
Yeah.
Unless you develop the passion along the way. But for most cases, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So.
And genuinely, honestly, you come out unemployable. If you come out of academia having done no extracurricular kind of work or study, you're genuinely going to come out unemployable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You're going to come out and be like, someone's going to ask you like, what's version control? And you're going to say, I don't know, but I can reverse a binary tree. Be like, what? I don't care. Can you work with other people? Right? Like, it's just, I don't really care if you know all these algorithms.
That's funny.
Can you commit something? And then, when the conversation kind of derails from there, it kind of becomes more of a kind of entertainment than a real interview. And, I'm sure you've had these experiences, and I've had these experiences too.
Yeah.
And Honestly, I think like modern academia cannot keep up with how quick the market changes and the market evolves, which is unfortunate because people rely on academia to make them employable. But in this field, we're so young, like compared to every other field in the world, like we're like 30, 40, 50 years young. It's so young and so immature and so volatile to change that, the industry changes faster than academia can keep up.
Yeah.
Students are still learning dated languages. They're still learning dated technologies, dated concepts.
Right.
And it's really not enough. And if you're relying on just this and you think that you can get by without doing work on your own, like you're in for a rough surprise when you graduate. A really rough surprise. Yeah.
I don't know where this come from for me. To not be focused on one thing. Like my dad's been at the Canadian National for all his life. And I was picturing that at a very young age, that what if this company ends? And okay, you could have went to another company, but where we're from, there's only that company. There's no other one.
Yeah.
So we would have had to move, and he didn't really speak English, and I saw so many family members that actually were screwed because of career changes. And
there's only two in this space, right? It's CN and CA.
Yeah.
So
the CP.
Okay.
Canadian Pacific.
Yeah.
And after that, you need to go on the west.
Yeah.
Of Canada. Yeah.
So that's pretty rough.
Yeah. Where the Carter is cheering right now. Yeah. He's from British Columbia. So
nice.
Yeah. I need to visit that once.
Yeah. No, it looks crazy. Yeah. I heard they like PHP over in BC. So.
I'm pretty sure they do.
That's probably the case, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I think, that was pretty cool, man. I'm so fucking trashed right now. Like,